just look at the addition when the signs are the same. So for example, we have the number 2 plus, let's say 1, for example. So it's just a 2 plus 1. It's straightforward. We know what this is. 2 plus 1 is 3. Another way you can look at it, in terms of integers, it's a positive 2 plus a positive 1. So the signs are the same. It's straightforward, a positive 3. We can look at another example. We're just using simple numbers, just real quick. A 4 plus a 4 plus 2. So 4 plus 2, which is a positive 4 plus a positive 2, is just regular old 6. Again, the signs are the same and we're adding them. Now, what if we have a negative 2 plus a negative 1? Addition of sign numbers says, well, the signs are the same and we're adding them. So it's going to be the same sign and just straight up addition. So it's going to be a negative 3. Similar to up here, we had a positive 2 plus a positive 1 is equal to a positive 3. We have a negative 2 plus a negative 1 is equal to a negative 3. Now looking at this, what if we have something like that? What do you think the answer would be? Negative 4 plus a negative 2. Well, that's just going to be a negative 6. The signs are the same, and we're just adding 4 plus 2. Signs are the same. We keep the sign and the answer. On this side, we're going to have different signs, opposite signs, or, the signs aren't the same. So I'm going to use the same numbers again. So we have a 2 plus a negative 1. Now I'll put a parentheses around it just to kind of isolate it, just to, so people won't get confused. So now we have a 2 plus a negative 1. Now the rule is this. When we're adding and the signs are opposite, we're going to find the difference between the two numbers. And when we get that answer, the sign of that answer will be the sign of the larger number. So we're going to find the difference between these two. The difference between 2 and 1 is pretty much a 2 minus 1, which is just going to be 1. And the sign of the larger number will be the sign of the answer. In this case, the sign of the larger number is a positive 2 because 1 has a negative beside it, and 2 is larger than 1. So that's the answer. Let me use the same numbers again. This time we have a negative 2 plus a 1. Using the same numbers again. So here's an addition of two numbers that the signs aren't the same. So the rule is we're going to find the difference between the numbers. So the difference between just a 2 and a 1. We're not worrying about the signs yet. The difference between 2 and 1 is a 1, right? Because a 2 minus 1 is 1. The difference between, I'm going to use this in a different color. The difference between pretty much a 2 minus 1 is 1. That's the difference between them. So the difference between 2 and 1 is going to be 1. And now what would be the sign of this? The sign will be the sign beside the larger number. Now we know 2 is naturally just larger than 1. And the 2 has this negative beside it. So guess what? That's going to be the answer. This 2 carries the, let's say it holds weight. It carries the sign over to here, if that makes sense. A -6 plus an 8. -6 plus 8. So here's an addition, and the signs aren't the same. Opposite signs or different signs or unlike signs, whichever you want to call it. Because this is a -6, and then this is just a regular +8. So I have to find the difference between 8 and 6. And the difference between 8 and 6 is 2, right? Because, like an 8 minus 6 is equal to 2. That's the difference between them. So the answer is going to be 2. But what's going to be the sign of the answer? Well, 8 is larger than 6. The 8 is going to determine the sign. So it's going to be +2. We leave it alone like that. I'm going to use the same numbers again. What if we have, using the same numbers, a 6 plus a -8. And again, I put the parentheses to really highlight that this is a 6 plus a -8. Some people may not put the parentheses, but I just put it there. Okay, so you have a 6 plus a -8. Here is an addition of unlike signs. And so the answer is going to be the difference between them. So the difference between just the regular numbers, the 8 and 6 is 2, because 8 minus 6 is 2. But now the sign of the answer, which one of these numbers will determine the sign of the answer? Well, it would be the larger number between the two. The larger absolute number. So like a 6 and here's an 8. We know 8 is just larger than 6. Naturally just larger than 6, right? 8. So, and beside the 8 is a negative. So because 8 is larger than 6 and 8 is negative, the answer will be that. And that's pretty much the rules. So again, when we're adding and the signs of the numbers are the same, it's just straight through. And the answer will be the same signs as the add-ins, right? Here's the same. 2 plus 1 is 3, straightforward. 4 plus 2 is 6, and that's just straightforward. -2 plus a -1 is a -3. Because 2 plus 1 is just 3, and then we just carry the same signs. And down here, same thing. This is just straightforward when we're adding. Just a little side note, I could have done this if I want. I could have put a parentheses if I wanted to. Also could have put a parentheses here. It doesn't matter. Sometimes you'll see a parentheses there. It's just to kind of group things, just to look better, just to really highlight that this is one group, just to isolate it from the sign and things like that. So I could have done that. But we're seeing here's the addition of the same signs, and the answer is that same sign and the addition of them. And then again, here's the addition of unlike signs. We find the difference between the numbers. That's the answer. And then the number, the greater number, will determine the sign of the answer. 2 is greater than 1. And and it's a +2, so the answer is going to be positive. In this case, 2, we know 2 is greater than 1, but since the 2 have a negative, the answer will have a negative. Just a couple more examples. So a -5 plus 3. So we have an addition and the signs aren't equal already. I know the answer is going to be negative already because the larger number is going to determine the sign. And 5 and 3, I know that 5 is larger than 3 and the 5 have the negative, so I already know the answer is going to be negative. Now I find the difference between 5 and 3, and the difference between 5 and 3 is pretty much 5 minus 3, and 5 minus 3 is 2. Here's our answer. So already we can have a 7 plus a negative 5. I put the parentheses to isolate it here so it looks a little better. Just by looking at this, I see a 7. I know 7 is larger than 5. I already know the answer is going to be a positive here. It's not going to have a negative. It's going to be positive because of the 7. 7 is larger than 5 and the 7 is positive. I know my answer is going to be positive. Okay, so now what's the difference between them? 7, pretty much as a 7 minus 5 is going to be a 2. So the answer is 2. So, here's, this is the addition of unlike signs. And I'll just quickly do one example or maybe two examples of like signs. So we have a negative 4 plus negative 4. So this is just a straightforward addition. And it's going to be negative 4 plus a negative 4. The answer is going to be negative because they're both negative. And it's just going to be 8 because it's pretty much a 4 plus 4. Negative 8 plus negative 1. They're both negative. I know the answer is going to be negative. And it's just a straightforward addition. 8 and 1 is 9. Sometimes you might see it written like this, with a parentheses over here and a parentheses over there. You might see something like that. Same thing. It's just a negative 8 plus a negative 1. And the answer is negative 9. Straightforward. And one last example with the signs being the same. I'll say 10 plus 2. They're both positive. This is just straightforward. It's just straight up 12. 10 plus 2 is 12, and the 10 is positive, the 2 is positive, so the 12 is positive. And again, if it was negative here and negative here, the answer would be negative here. So that is that's pretty much the rules to it. You're adding the same signs, your answer is going to be the same sign, and you just add regularly. If you add in opposite signs, you find the difference between those numbers. That would be your answer. And the sign of the larger number determines the sign of your answer. And that is all for now with addition and subtraction of sign numbers.